is more important rather than just running the operations of the company. Moving forward, the partners have unlimited liability. Again, as we have, I am singly responsible for the entire organization. So I'm the only person. These are companies where the market is, it might be a consulting firm, it might be a construction firm. If a private company is compared to a public company, it will have its own advantages as well as disadvantages. Good morning and welcome to the first session of Unit 3, and in this we are going to speak about the forms of business. So in the business environment today, we know that there are different types of companies that exist in terms of building up an enterprise. But which kind of enterprise would you like to choose if you are an entrepreneur? So in this session, we are going to discuss about the forms in which the organizations are being set up, and let's try to explore each and every type of business. So moving forward, let's talk about the business entity itself first. A business entity is an entity that is formed and administered as per the commercial law in order to engage in a business or in a commercial activity, trading activity. So what happens here is that when you talk about a business entity, you are talking about a place or a system or an institution which is as per the company law. It is under the sections of the company law, and the major aim of any business activity is to engage in some form of transaction. Followed by, there are various kinds of business structures in India. Now, the business structure also plays an important role on how you want the business to be perceived or how it has to take forward altogether. So what is very, very important here is that sometimes you might feel that you have an idea, you have a knowledge about how you want to run the business. But is that the way how you want to set up the business? Is that the way how you want to function it? That becomes a very big question mark. So most of the people want that the business has to be perceived in such a manner that the public are able to understand them, the public are able to go forward, invest with them, because there is some meaning, there is some purpose in that particular business. Now, let me tell you, for example, when you talk about the Tata company, the Tata group of companies, there are n number of companies inside there. There are about 20 to 25 odd companies which come under the umbrella of the Tata Sons. But in general, when people talk about, they know individually every company, but they might not know Tata Sons. The reason is that each and every company under the Tata group have their own presence, has their own importance altogether. So when you talk about a Tata Consultancy Services, that's an IT company. So Tata will have their own presence, will have their own marking as TCS as a company itself. When you talk about Tata Motors, or when you talk about Tata Steel, or when you talk about a Tata Coffee, or you talk about Tata Beverages, every single company has their own identity and they have their own image. But then when it comes to the Tata group itself, and when you start looking into it, at that point of time, you will be able to understand that the entire organization is actually a very big conglomerate which is holding several companies under it. So what is happening here is that the kind of business that you want to involve, the kind of business that you want people to perceive, to understand and to take forward is what you are trying to project in the market. So you will have ideas, you will have thought process of how to make the business come forward, how to take the business to the next level as far as possible. So with that, you start getting into choosing a business structure altogether. So that is where the business structure, the business ideology comes into picture. Now, as a company, my thought process is all about building a structure, building an entity, building an organization which will have our own value, which will have our own set of organizational procedures altogether. So when I say that I want to be a private company, or when I say that I want to be a public company, I have certain ideologies behind it. I have certain thought process behind it. So that's why choosing a business structure is more important rather than just running the operations of the company. Moment you choose a structure of a business, moment you understand, you decide that this is the way I need to operate, this is the way my image needs to be perceived in the public, you become a superstructure, you become a company by yourself, you have a own identity and brand image coming forward. The next thing is that each structure will have its own pros and cons, and it depends upon the individual circumstances under which this business owners will have to stick on to the structure and understand to the needs of his business. Now, why is this important is that if a private company is compared to a public company, it will have its own advantages as well as disadvantages. So for an entrepreneur, when he chooses a particular variety, a particular type of company, that's saying that I would start with a private or a public or a sole partnership, or I would like to go for a sole one-man company, whatever nature of company he selects, there are certain advantages and disadvantages added to it. But these advantages and disadvantages would be selected by the entrepreneur, and he needs to work upon it in such a manner so that it is favorable to him. After selecting a particular type of company and then coming back and telling that, I want to change my model or I want to go back to the system, becomes difficult. So that's why for every single young entrepreneur, it is always advisable that they spend some time in understanding the advantages, disadvantages, how the company works, where it works, what we need to do in order to build a system. All those functionaries have to be told very, very clearly. Followed by, this includes the level of personal liability, tax position and administration, which is very, very important and also crucial in the modern world. Why? Because when you choose a type of company, you're also choosing the liability with it. You're also choosing the amount of tax to be paid and the administrative responses that comes into picture. So what is happening here is that in a long run, the person has to understand that every single form of company will have an add-on coming in picture, will have an add-on in terms of what kind of structure, what kind of tax payment, how we have to manage it, what is the administrative responsibility, what kind of divisions we need to have. So all those factors will get imbibed with the type of structure you are going to select. Now, moving forward, the types of business: the sole proprietorship, partnership firm, private, public and limited liability. So these are the 5 major structures which we are going to see today. So we are going to start with the sole proprietor, then we'll move into partnership, then we will talk about the private limited, the public limited company and the limited liabilities company. Now when I talk about these 5 structures, each one of them will have its own importance. Each one of them will have its own ideology, why we are built in that manner. So what is advisable here is that look into each and every structure with equal importance. Try to understand and analyze the factors in such a way that each and every structure will add some value to the organization. So quickly moving forward, let's start with the sole proprietorship. Now, when I say the word sole proprietorship here, that means I am responsible. I am only responsible. I am singly responsible for the entire organization. So I'm the only person who's going to run this business, who's going to bear the loss or the profit of the firm. Now, why this comes into picture here is that many a time people feel this factor, I am good in doing what I am, in terms of if I know a particular skill, if I know a particular kind of business, let me do it, let me try it, let me first stick on to myself so that if anything happens in the long run, it will be only with me. I don't want to involve people in the first level. I don't want to bring in a gathering at the first level and get into any sort of risk or get into any sort of public damage altogether. So what I want to do here is that I want to start a very, very small firm with I being the owner of the company, and I will take the responsibility of whatever profit or loss that particular firm is going to face in the long run. Now, the second thing here is that the entire capital of the business is provided by the owner. He may raise more funds through borrowings. So very, very simple concept here. So if I'm going to start a tea shop, or if I'm going to start a boutique shop, or if I'm going to start a small shop which is going to trade on some fancy items or on a textile shop, or it might be something related to a salon or whatever is that, the capital that is needed to start this business is going to be purely mine, which means to say that I will be the owner of the business in terms of infusing the capital. So how will I get the capital? That's again my problem. Why? Because, or I would use the word challenge, because I have to borrow funds, or I have to put in my funds, or I have to go to the bank and I have to say that, sir, can you please lend me money in order to start a business? But in the due course, what is understandable here is that the entire business is being run by the owner itself. In the case of sole proprietorship, as we were talking about, this is a kind of entity where you see that there is a single owner. So the single owner will now take the responsibility of bringing in the funds. So it is his responsibility that he starts seeing that funds start coming into the organization. The funds will start building into the organization, and it is his responsibility whether if he wants to borrow extra amount for the growth. Now, the third point here is that the proprietor and the business enterprise are one and same in the eyes of law. Now, this is a very, very important concept that we need to dwell about. Now, when I say this, the owner and the enterprise are the same. Now, we might have studied in accounting law saying that the entity will have its own identity and the owner will have a separate identity. But in the case of the sole proprietorship, this entity and the business owner are the same. So they become one or the same. So when they become one or the same, that means to say here that under the eyes of law, under the Companies Act, the sole proprietor as well as the organization are the same. They are not going to change at any point of time. Followed by the liability of the proprietor is unlimited. Now, very, very important. Why? Because for the proprietor, whatever amount he is borrowing can go to whichever extent possible. So for him, it is unlimited because he is owning it. He will borrow. He'll again give it back. He'll keep on rotating it in that manner. So that means to say here, whatever is the liability for that particular owner, it is going to be unlimited altogether. There are less legal formalities. Absolutely. Why? Because I am the single owner of the business. I don't have to worry too much, and I will not have much of risk or much of responsibilities in terms of answering my shareholders or in terms of answering anybody else in the public for that matter. Whatever happens within the four walls of my company. So I will be responsible for whatever that is happening inside the company. I don't have to conduct a meeting. I don't have to declare dividends. I don't have to answer the questions of shareholders. I don't need to have any extraordinary general meetings here. So what is happening here is that it is going to be a single organization which is going to be run by me. I am going to take the ownership. I am going to take the responsibility, and everything belongs to me. Followed by, this type of structure is suitable for production which involves manual skills. That's what we were trying to talk about. It might be a tea shop, it might be a textile shop, it might be a salon, or it might be any kind of entity which is just talking about a menial manual skill procedure, a very, very simplistic skill where you are not really, highly technologically oriented, or it is not something which is highly into some sort of high-end design factor. It's a simple labor, simple skill that is involved, where you see that I can run the business by myself. I don't need extra hands to come in and start working with me. So sole proprietorship is one kind of business where you are the owner, you are the business, and you run the entity by yourself. Followed by, we are now going to talk about a partnership firm. So as we move from the sole proprietor to that of a partnership, the word itself will tell you clearly that partnership is between two or more persons. Now that is the key word that you have to remember. Partnership means minimum two persons or two or more persons who have joined hands together, who have agreed on the factor to share the profits of a business carried on by them. So that is where it becomes very, very important, which means to say that the partnership firm on that particular level agrees on this factor, saying that all of us here have agreed to form a firm which will work for a specific purpose. It might be a law firm, it might be an auditing firm, it might be a consulting firm, it might be a construction firm, or it might be something regarding to an architectural firm also. But then what we have agreed here is that we have all agreed to join and work as a partner and share the risk and responsibility among us. So that's where the role of partnership firm comes into picture. Followed by, what are the features of a partnership firm? Now the first thing is minimum of two persons are required. So you cannot say that partner is one. No, that will not be accepted. Minimum of two people are required to form a partnership firm altogether. Then only the business can be called as a partnership firm. Followed by, the partners share profit in any ratio agreed by them. Now this is very, very important. Now let's say that there are four partners in a firm. All the four partners necessarily might not agree, saying that we will take 1/4. Somebody might have 3, somebody might be in 2, somebody might be in other ratios altogether. But it is up to the partners to agree on the ratio of sharing the profits in the firm. So the partners will decide under what risk, under what ability, under what capacity they will be sharing the profits, they will be sharing the revenue and also the losses and the expenses of the firm. Moving forward, the partners have unlimited liability. Again, as we have spoken about in the sole proprietorship, similarly in partnership firm, the partners will have unlimited liability, which means they will not be in the form of holding to a particular level of liability, holding to a particular form altogether. They have an unlimited liability, so they can go to any extent as far as possible. Followed by, the law does not recognize the firm as separate entity distinct from its partner. Now here, the law says very, very clearly that the law does not distinctively identify the firm as separate entity distinct from its partner. So the partner and the firm are again the same. So whoever is the partner, the firm, both of them are same. Just like the sole proprietorship, they become one in terms of organization to the partner. They are recognized as single entity here. So when you look into the partnership, minimum of two people are required. They share the profits with them in the agreed conditions. They have an unlimited liability, and again their entity or their identity is very much restricted as one single identity under the Companies Act. Now moving forward, we will be talking about the private company. As we start expanding ourselves and moving to the next level of company, what is happening here is that the growth, the responsibility, the profit and losses also start expanding to the next level possible. So in a private company limited, it is held by few individuals privately, having a separate legal entity. Now comes the matter of separate legal entity. So there are a group of people who have decided to start a private limited firm. Now that private limited firm has come up in such a manner where they go ahead and say that, yes, this firm will have its own entity as it, and the owners are separate. Now in this type of company, shareholders cannot trade the shares publicly. So this kind of company, you will see that the shares are not traded publicly at all. It is very much within the people itself. So that is where the shareholders cannot exercise any right, any ownership over the company. Followed by, what are the features of this company? The shareholders cannot sell or transfer or offering any other shareholders a part of the company. Why? Because all the shares are held very much within the members of the company. So the members alone will be the holders of the company, and they will not allow the shares to be traded freely or publicly across. Second thing, the shareholders must approve the sale or transfer of shares. So which means to say that the members who are holding the share, they should approve, saying that yes, we are ready to sell it. We are ready to hold it out in the market. Then only after the approval is obtained, you will be able to go for a sale or a transfer of the shares. This cannot be done freely at all. Next, followed by, they cannot offer their shares to any general public or a stock exchange. So that means today, for example, if you're talking about Mahindra and Mahindra, or you're talking about a Titan, or you're talking about TechM, or you talk about Infosys, these are publicly traded companies where the shares can be bought by anybody, any public in the market. But here, what is going to happen is that for the normal people, you will not be able to go forward and exchange the shares in the market openly in general factors altogether. Why? Because this becomes very, very important here. All of us need to understand this factor that the shareholders are not getting the trade freely done. They have to hold it. They have to continue with certain amount. It is restricted among the private members altogether. Followed by, this not only protects against a hostile takeover, but also protects the value of the company shares from the association in the stock market. Now, what does the private company do is that they do not want a third person to come inside and suddenly take over the company just because that person is holding the maximum amount of share. So the private companies are pretty much secured in this factor. It is run only by the private members, only by the members who founded the company, and they will not allow a third person to take a takeover there. So all the shares are limited. It is well within the members. So suddenly nobody can come outside from a stock exchange, from any other public area, and take over this company. Followed by, it can have a maximum of 50 shareholders. Nowadays, after the amendment of company laws, it can go up to 200 members. So it can, initially it was only limited to 50, but now it can go up to 200 altogether. Now, an invitation to public to subscribe any shares or debentures is prohibited. Now, that word is very, very important. As a private limited company, you will not be entitled to go further and start saying that I can go further and ask the public to please subscribe to my shares. That is not at all possible. Whatever happens has to happen within the members alone. You cannot go to the public and ask for money. Moving forward, now let's move to the biggest form of the organization, and that is called as the public company. Now, when you move to the public limited company, this is a form of company with business entity that operates as a separate legal entity, and it is owned by the shareholders. Shares of these company are publicly traded. They are freely available in a stock exchange market. So now you will be able to see that these are companies where the market is allowing them to trade, where the market is giving an opportunity for the investors to come in and start investing into the company. Followed by, the shareholders of a public limited company potentially lose only the amount of the money they have paid to the shares. So tomorrow, if the company is going to sink, the company is going to wind up, that means for the shareholders, only to the extent of which they have bought the share, only that much they are liable, and not for the entire liability of the company. This kind of entity is normally headed by a board of directors, a chairman, nominated members, and so many other factors that come into in the form of the Companies Act. So this is where you will see that it is nominated kind of a role. These are elected by the shareholders. They will have an annual general meeting. Things cannot be taken into your own confidence. You have to discuss it in public. You have to be transparent as far as possible. Based on that only, you will be able to go further. Followed by the company does not belong to any person since only one person cannot own it. Now, what happens here is that here everybody is a part of the company. So one person cannot go and claim the ownership. He cannot say that it is my company alone. It is my foundation alone. You cannot say that because everybody is a part of the company. They have invested money into the company in form of shares. Followed by public limited companies are strictly regulated, and by the law, they have to publish their complete financial statements. And this is an important factor here. Why? Because every time, whatever documentation, whatever statements, whatever analysis, whatever is the company's operation, including your financial reports, your AGMs, your EGMs, every single documentation has to be published by the company, and it has to be available to the public at any point of time, because that is regulated by the board, and there will be people watching and monitoring your activities. Followed by the limited liability partnership. Now, when we talk about the word called as limited liability partnership, that means it combines the advantage of both a company and a partnership into a single entity. Now, look into the factor here. You have a company also, you have a partnership also. Both of them are combined together and they will form a limited liability partnership. Now, when you do that, there are minimum of 2 partners and no maximum limit. Should be for the profit business. They are not for any other purpose. Yes, they are a profitable one. They will maintain annual accounts. Like in the company format, you need to maintain your annual financial records. You will not be able to go without that. Followed by the rights and duties of a partner in an LLP is governed by the agreement between partners, and they have the flexibility to devise the agreement as per their choice. So now what is happening is that when the partners come into the company, they will have the flexibility. They will have their choice as how they want to run the company, how they are taking it forward, and why it is the organization devised in this particular manner. So when we talk about this limited liability partnership, it is a combination. That's where it becomes really interesting, because you will have one side the format of a company, the other side you will have the format of a partnership altogether. So that's why limited liability partnership is an interesting combination. It's an interesting way how it starts working in a flexible manner. With this, we come to the end of this session. I hope and believe that all the information shared in this session is of a high help and of a great resource to you. In the upcoming sessions, we are going to talk about the formats of other types of companies like the trust, the cooperative society, the Hindu undivided family, and all those factors. Until then, stay tuned, stay blessed, and stay enlightened forever. Thank you once again for joining me today.